there are some opinions that we can just agree to disagree, and then there's other stuff that is like, no, this is real personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, people didn't used to care about it that much, though.
Yeah.
They did. I think it is interesting how much, like, people used to never talk about politics that much. You would kind of say maybe who you were going to vote for, and kind of sometimes you give a couple lines about it, but you never, I feel like, would be like, oh, screw you for voting for that. Like, it would never, even the thought would never come into your head, I feel like.
Yeah, it does feel like it's taken center stage, and I wonder how much of that is. I mean, it's probably a lot of it is exacerbated by social media. I suspect the 24-hour news cycle also led to that too, right?
That ruined a lot of stuff. That created a lot of anger.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we used to be able to take a day off, half the day off.
Yep.
But now they're like, oh, you need a little more anger.
Yeah. Well, and intentionally so. I mean, it's like, so there's plenty of research out there that says that, content, news, or anything else that makes people angry or scared is far more likely to go viral than other stuff, right? And so politicians know that, and just purely from a financial perspective, if you put an ad out that makes people mad, it's going to get more clicks. It's going to get, you double the value essentially of that ad by making people mad with it, right?
Yeah.
So there are people who are benefiting financially from our rage. And that's not just true with politicians. That's true with Fox News, CNN, et cetera. They want to make people mad.
Yeah.
Get them going. Yeah.
Instead of just having an article, they'll reframe the title so it has an enemy.
Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty crazy. Yep. Dealing with anxiety and stress in the age of the 24/7 news cycle.
Interesting.
Let me see. Whether it's the coronavirus, political divisiveness, threats of terrorism, or mass shootings, you might not be immediately affected by these issues, but constant exposure to 24-hour news and social media, which is often heavily skewed towards the negative, can adversely influence your mental health and overall well-being. More than 70% of Americans believe the media blows things out of proportion, which may seem harmless, but it could lead to increased stress and anxiety. Wow. So, but the tough part is if we're addicted to it, though.
Right. Yep.
That's the tough part, is that if we're addicted to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's because, people are drawn to this thing that ultimately causes them harm.
Right.
And
what is that? Has that always been? I mean, has it just been since the apple in the Garden of Eden, I
mean, information is, people crave information, right? I mean, that's another emotion that I like to talk about sometimes is curiosity, right? And people do crave information. It makes them feel good about themselves, especially if they can share it with other people. It's like a form of social currency. So knowing things is, better than not knowing things. And so people are drawn to media. And then when that media makes them mad, they're more likely actually to share it with other people. They're more likely because it gets the reaction they want, right?
Yeah.
So if I came in here and told you just some sort of arbitrary fact, you'd be like, that's great. But if I came in here and told you something that made you really mad, now I'm getting a reaction.
I'd be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it?
Exactly.
It's pretty crazy.
And then we problem solve.
So we've kind of like death hacked ourselves in a way. Like there's life hacks, and then I feel like there's death hacks. And I feel like sometimes the algorithm does that, you know, or the possibility to always have it at your fingertips.
I think if there's a thing that I find sort of most dangerous or worrisome about modern day America or the world is the degree to which we are isolating ourselves, especially from people that we might disagree with, and the degree to which we're not having like real conversations with people where we can get an opportunity to learn how they think. Right? We make assumptions about what other people are doing and saying, and then we react to those assumptions more than we react to what's actually happening.
Yeah, it is interesting how much we've become kind of puppetable by, like, I don't know if I just want to say mainstream media, but by bigger stories maybe that we didn't write ourselves, kind of.
Yeah.
Well,
and when you think about what like the social media algorithms do and how we end up seeing the content that we agree with more regularly, we interact with people who think like us more regularly, right? We just are seeing that we're connected. I put that sort of in quotes, but connected to more people than ever before, but not really, because one, we're only seeing a very specific sliver of their lives, and we're not having this. We're not necessarily engaging with people who are different from us very regularly.
I mean, do you guys notice that we're any angrier now than we were in the past?
Yeah. This is. I wish we could go back in time and like have some sort of anger thermometer, right? That could measure anger over time, because this is the question that I think everybody wants to know the answer to: is are we angrier now than we used to be?
Yeah.
And in so many ways, it sure seems like we are, right? Because we see tons of examples of it. We see so much rage. I think the parts that we don't have answers to is a lot of that rage just more visible now than it used to be, right? Are we seeing it more now because of social media, right? So we get more stuff captured on video than we ever did. And that might be what's happening, that those things were happening before, we just didn't know. It could also be that particular expression styles have become normalized, right? So yelling, screaming, those things are like hostility. Those things are becoming more common.
Point,
Yeah, and so maybe that anger was there, but those outward expressions are much more common now. I think there is some reason to think we're angrier now than we used to be. I think like the stuff we just were saying about social media is definitely bringing out.
The illusion, I think there used to be more of, I think like tradition we had, it felt like there was more of a sense of togetherness maybe. I wonder if those things left people feeling more complete or safer in their country. I do start to notice that there starts to feel a little bit of like, what could happen in 15 years? As opposed to that was never a thought when I was a kid. It was always like, I feel like we're going to be okay here.
Right.
So I wonder if some of that like just subconsciously starts to boil inside of you.
Oh, I absolutely think so. I think, one of the things we're dealing with, and I think a lot of this is post-pandemic, but not just post-pandemic, is, so anger dovetails pretty closely with anxiety, right? That these two emotions are pretty similar. They actually feel pretty similar physiologically. So there's a lot of overlap there. And I think it's fair to say that Americans are, and probably worldwide, people are more anxious now about the future than they have been for a very long time, right?
Okay, yeah.
And that anxiety, it comes from a place of uncertainty about, safety and financial security and all these things.
Even having jobs. As they say, like AI is going to, every day here, AI is going to take your job, and the guy's like, I'm unemployed. And they're like, it'll take that job. You're like, Jesus, I can't even be unemployed anymore. But I think there is a little bit of fear. Even somebody who's just sitting on their couch watching, eating Fritos and just watching, TV shows all day, that even that job's going to be, they're going to be like, well, I'm going to lose this.
Right. Yeah. I think that there is all of this uncertainty is leading to people, and because I think in some ways part of what happens is it leads to some competitiveness. It leads to like, hey, look, the pie is getting smaller that we all share, and I'm worried that I'm not going to have enough, right? And I'm not going to be able to make ends meet. And all of that leads to frustration with your fellow humans, right?
Oh yeah, because your perspective is suddenly, I've got to take care of myself instead of like we have to take care of each other.
Exactly.
And that gets a little creepy.
Exactly.
What do we do with pervasive anger at society and ideology? Situation out of control.
I think that's another thing that happened during the pandemic, is that I think a lot of people in the United States and probably globally really started to feel like they couldn't trust each other.
Yeah.
And I think that happened in lots of ways, right? It was sort of a sense of, hey, people aren't going to, they're more interested in themselves than they are in taking care of each other, right? They won't, do X, Y, or Z. They won't wear masks. They won't open things up. They're not worried about my finances. They're not, they're only worried about their own thing. And I think that scared people and led to a lot of animosity amongst people.
When I think also people didn't know if their government cared anymore.
Yep.
Which was even like which was probably similar.
Yeah.
In the sense that we're like, can I trust my government? Can I trust like, you see stories like the opioid epidemic. And you're like, the fact that the family didn't even go to jail or face any time, and the amount of, the amount of pain that caused so many families, not to mention deaths.
Right.
But I think, things like that, it makes you start to question. So if you don't even think, if you can, you can always kind of question your government. I think that's safe, and question society and what's going on. It's good to think curiously, but I feel like that was probably another thing that happened is people were like, I don't know. Every commercial's about drugs. Like, it's just like, where can I get valid information and who can I trust?
Yep.
And it probably became scary. You like, I have to start with myself.
Yep. And I think that sort of uncertainty leads to feelings of frustration, leads to, and I think part of what happened too is that for some people they felt like, well, the answers here are obvious.
Yeah.
And so why don't other people see how obvious these answers are? And I don't know that the answers were necessarily obvious, but I think that people felt like, why can't people just do whatever, and then we can get through this.
Right.
And when other people...
You mean during COVID, you mean?
Yeah, during COVID.
Yeah.
And then,
I think people had just real different views of it. It was like in California, things were very locked down. And then here, things were more open.
Yep.
And it was like, what's the best way to do this? It was hard to learn.
It was even, I live in Green Bay, and we've got, there's the Green Bay public schools, and there's other public school districts that are like connected, and they're all doing different things. And so there's a sense of, well, here we're doing this, 5 miles away they're doing something different. Why? What's going on? And so then there's an anger and frustration amongst the people who live in those communities, and then people saying, well, I'm going to take my kids and send them to that school because they're doing this, or I'm going to, and so all of these things started to bubble up and lead to frustration.
Yeah, a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
And I know how to do it. People wanted to, the second you don't trust or believe that your society that's built kind of is looking out for you, or you can trust it, then it really, you got to go back to yourself.
Well, and then, imagine if we're not talking about society, we're just talking about a family, right? And you as like a kid in a family realize, wow, the other people in this family aren't necessarily going to do the things that are best for me.
Right.
It becomes real hard to continue to feel good about that, and over time, right?
Oh.
People have to earn that trust back. And I think we're right now in a phase where people don't feel like anyone's earning that trust back. They're just like, we still don't trust each other. They don't have my best interests in mind. They don't care about the same things as me. What am I going to do? How are we going to get through this? And I don't think anybody's got any answers to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if it's one of those things that just takes time, or, that's always the thing.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think time is going to be part of it. I hope that there are things we can rally around.
Humor is usually a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know they're trying to put out like...
you would say that. You're a comedian.
That's probably true. I would hope to say it, huh?
Yeah.
They just had a new show, Tires, on Netflix, which is really crazy.
I've seen an ad for it. I haven't watched it yet.
It's like different than a lot of stuff they put on there. It's just like, it seems like it's from like totally like the 80s or something. It's just kind of like just humor without like judging that every person in the show has to have certain like you're just letting people be. They could be characters. Like, you could have a character you're like, oh, that guy's hilarious, but I don't agree with him.
Okay.
Whereas to be like, oh, that guy, I'm not even gonna see if he is hilarious because I don't agree with the character.
Right.
And it's like, dude, it's okay.
Right.
So like just things being more possible, or just open their brains to like, okay, a character could believe differently than I do.
Right. Yep.
Right? Because I think for a while it's been like, I don't even want my characters to have any different views than I do. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
When you think about that.
Yeah.
I'm drowning, but I only want a superhero to show up if he feels exactly the same way I do.
Yeah. Well, it's tough. I think one of the tricky things we've had to deal with is that there are opinions that people can like sort of rally around. There are opinions that people can like disagree with, and in an understandable, reasonable way, right? Reasonable disagreements. But then so often those disagreements are about like real scary stuff. It's not me disagreeing about like, hey, is Cats a good movie? I don't know why I picked Cats. I think it's because my son loved the movie Cats.
Oh, he did? I
Yeah.
haven't seen it, I don't think.
Okay, I'm not going to recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my that's my advice to you. That's if you walk away with one thing from this episode, is that you probably shouldn't see Cats.
Fair.